These days, plenty of seniors and their families have found themselves at a graduation ceremony of some sort. These typically include commencement speeches. Sometimes these are funny. At an Ivy League school some years ago, David Letterman said, "Remember, the Ivy League graduate of today is the Olive Garden waiter of tomorrow." Bob Hope once gave this advice to those about to graduate. He told them, "It's a difficult world out there. It's a really tough place." So he said, "My advice, don't go." And then he sat back down. Many commencement speeches are much more forgettable. But some years ago, a college graduate handed me the text of their commencement address. I know that the speaker was a female writer, and I apologize, I do not remember the speaker's name. But I saved the text because it captured something really important, I thought. And it does seem to be one of the key elements of today's feast. The speaker at one point said, "So here's what I wanted to tell you today. Get a life, a real life, not a manic pursuit of the next promotion, the bigger paycheck, the larger house. Do you think you'd care so very much about those things if you blew an aneurysm one afternoon or found a lump in your breast?" And then the speaker focuses on what we look at, on which we focus our eyes, what we see and what we don't see. And she says, "Get a life in which you stop and watch how a red-tailed hawk soars, or the way a baby scowls with concentration when she tries to pick up a Cheerio with her thumb and first finger." And the speaker continued, "It's so easy to take for granted the color of our kids' eyes. Take your eyes off your portfolio and look into the eyes of those who love you. Take your eyes off the TV and see the seasons slowly change. Take your eyes off the mirror and see those who hurt." The angel in today's first reading would agree. Immediately after Jesus ascended into heaven, the first words spoken were by an angel who addressed that little group of disciples with this important question: "Why do you stand looking at the sky?" Why indeed? It is the right question. For with the ascension, Jesus Christ is no longer physically on earth, nor is Christ up there somewhere. Instead, Christ is in us and around us right now, and in each and every right now. And that yields the question, where do we focus our eyes? Where do we look for God? It can be much easier to name God as up there somewhere. Yet if we mostly look up to find God, we will mostly miss God. God right here, right now. As many of you know about me by now, one of the sentences that has become truly important to me over my now 42 years of priesthood is the answer to the question, how does God show up? How does God come to us? The answer, God comes disguised as our lives. I repeat that. God comes disguised as our lives. In the ordinary, imperfect people around us, in the messes and mixture of a melancholy day, in the loving and the letting go, the laughter and the losses, in what you and I can find inside our own hearts, in the suffering and heartache of our sisters and brothers in Ukraine, and the suffering and heartache of our sisters and brothers in this country. Here we are grieving again. Grieving again in light of the horrific shootings in Uvalde, Texas. That on top of already grieving for the heartache from the recent shootings in Buffalo, Atlanta, Santa Fe, Michigan, Boulder, El Paso, Laguna. We can't just look up and say, God, fix this. If we ask, God, why don't you do something to stop all the violence and hatred in the world? I think if we could hear God's answer, we would hear, I did. I created you. We have to look inside ourselves at what God truly says to me, to you. What's God asking of us? What of my own social media posts? What news I watch? What anger I let fester in my own heart? What hatred and bigotry and exclusion do I tolerate? Is my speech healing and inclusive or not? And then we have to look into each other's eyes. Because if we learn to look at those we think so different than us, we would see that each person is someone in whom God lives. We've got to look there, in each other's eyes. We've got to do that. That commencement speaker was right when she said, get a life, a real life. Take your eyes off your portfolio and look into the eyes of those who love you. Take your eyes off the TV and see the seasons slowly change. Take your eyes off the mirror and see those who hurt. On this feast of the Ascension, the angel would agree.